I'm Johan Rashivega, and here we are in our sound room at Holyoke Media, One Court Plaza in Holyoke, Massachusetts. I want to welcome Anne Thalheimer. Should I say Dr. Anne Thalheimer, our newly elected Ward 3 City Councilor in the city of Holyoke. And it's a pleasure to welcome you officially in your role as City Councilor here in our city.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
So, this has been a long process of getting to this point where now you're a duly elected city councilor representing Ward 3.
Yep.
So let's go in a little bit into, first of all, getting the opportunity for people to know who you are.
Yeah.
And how this journey, now getting to the point that you are taking a seat in the City Council for the City of Holyoke, has been a process and an experience that now is opening up a lot of new opportunities.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. The things I have learned in the last week and a half, like 2 weeks, have been amazing. Like, I have a granular knowledge about how things like the DPW and the city engineer work, and it's fascinating. But it's exciting. I'm really excited to bring a kind of a new voice and a new perspective to the ward. I think folks got pretty used to a certain way of doing things, and maybe it's time. Maybe it's a good time for a change, right? I have a different approach. I mean, my predecessor and I are very different in many, many ways. Some obvious, right? Some not. But it's really cool. I've heard from a lot of residents who feel like they really feel represented now. They feel like they have a voice. They feel like they have someone they can talk to about things or come to with concerns. And I've been working on a number of them. Like, we hit the ground running. We've been working on a number of projects already. So in that, and remember, like, I'm 2 weeks into Monday is 2 weeks. So what I'm doing is we're going to start planning informal ward get-togethers, because one of the things I ran on and one of the things I really intend to do is more in-person FaceTime, ward meetings, this kind of thing. And I think the way it makes the most sense to do it is to do probably like monthly informal meetups where I'll have information about what's going on in the ward, orders I've filed, improvements that they should expect to see and when, this kind of stuff. But also a low-key way for people in the ward to meet each other. Because I've discovered that, like, a lot of the folks up in one part of the ward don't necessarily know folks in another part of the ward, in part because the demographics are pretty different, the geography is pretty different, the needs are pretty different, but we're all in the same ward, and we all vote at the same place. And so I get to represent a lot of really different needs and perspectives and concerns. And it's nice when everybody gets to meet each other. We did something like this when we were, I love this so much. We did a little walkthrough over at Elmwood Forest, and neighbors got to meet other neighbors. We had folks come in from other wards, and it was a really nice afternoon with people talking to each other like people, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum. And, you know, it's always a good thing to get outside and touch grass, you know, like, get away from the computer and just go outside and get some fresh air and meet your neighbors. But I'm also envisioning this as a way that people can get to know me a little bit. Like, I have been involved in a lot of different things in Holyoke and beyond, and I run in a lot of different circles, and so different people know me from different places, and it's kind of fun when you connect the dots. I think it was Dusty at the Shoestring. It was somebody in news media. I think it was Dusty, where he's like, "Yeah, I've interviewed you like 6 times for 6 different separate things." I'm like, yeah, this is what community looks like. And particularly in Holyoke, folks have a lot of different roles and do a lot of different things and are connected through people. And I love that. That is, I mean, really what we turn to when we need help or something isn't working. We turn to our neighbors first. We turn to our communities first. And then we get into the higher level infrastructure. So all of these things ideally are going to be working together.
And talking about that, multiple roles that one person can have being in Holyoke, and not necessarily only focused or targeted to Holyoke itself. In your case, you have ties with different organizations, institutions, and community groups that involve education, that involve arts, that involve culture, that involve activism. And I can just think about your involvement with Holyoke Local Cultural Council, your involvement with Springfield Museums, your involvement as an educator with high-profile educational institutions like Yale University. And even with that, you are committed to working with the city and your local community in Ward 3 to make sure that people can have access and opportunities to get participation in the improvement of the quality of life in everything related to the city.
Yeah, I love it local. This is the part where I do need to say the disclaimer of like all the things that I'm about to say are only represent my views personally, not the views of any of the institutions where I work or organize or help or any of that. Like I am speaking for me and, secondarily in city council speaking for the folks I represent who voted for me and those who didn't vote for me too. So yeah, I love it local. I love the opportunity to connect all these dots because it's not just me. We have lots of folks in the ward who are also connecting all those different dots. Like, we have 3 separate poet laureates from other cities that live not just in Holyoke, but in Ward 3. And I don't think people know that. And I love that kind of stuff. Different organizations doing a lot of different things. All those that overlap in those connections. Like I take pottery classes, but I'm taking pottery classes with a friend of mine that I also know from roller derby and from community organizing. Like all this amazing overlap. And these are the things that I want other folks to have too if it's something that they want. You never know if you're going to meet somebody at a ward meeting and like you just really hit it off or you resonate or like, oh, I've never met my neighbor on the other side of the back fence. That kind of stuff. Building in those connections, very important.
And one aspect, thinking about the mention you do about the people who did not vote for you
Mm-hmm.
and how you are looking up to connect and to get that participation being involved. It's interesting to think when you mentioned, yes, you and your predecessor have a totally different approach to things, and they may be seen by some people as, oh, this is going to be a radical change to something that we don't know, because always change is something that is unexpected, that
Mm-hmm.
is more oftentimes seen with some worry or fear of some sort, which is understandable.
Oh, sure.
But I think the beauty of being in this process is that in the end, you are trying to get to connect not only with the people who voted for you, but as well the people who did not now or before or ever,
Or will in the future, right?
and see how that can be something that you all together can work around.
Yeah. I mean, that infrastructure is still there. Like, people don't have to like me or to have voted for me. And remember, of course, your vote is private. Like, nobody knows who you voted for. You know, that's it. I don't have a secret list somewhere and be like, oh yeah, this person didn't vote for me. That's not how this works. But that infrastructure helps all of us. Building those community relationships helps all of us. Opening doors helps all of us. Like, I think people, I mean, the big thing in Ward 3 is traffic stuff. Secondarily, plowing the streets, trash getting picked up, that stuff. But it is primarily traffic. And I've discovered a disconnect between different departments and getting information out, like speed humps. Speed humps are a perpetual issue because there's this perception that if you fill out you do the petition, you bring it to city council signs off on it, it's done, the speed humps will appear. That's not actually how it works. Like, that's just the first piece of the process, because then there has to be a traffic study, and there has to be this, and there has to be that, and then there are mass DOT considerations, which I am still learning about, and they are very granular. But I think there's this sort of like, oh, we filed it, it should be done. It's just the first piece of a process, and I hope that as I learn about this stuff, I am able to convey it to other people to also learn about this stuff. And so we have kind of a deeper understanding of how these different departments work and how they interconnect with each other, what they can do, what they can't do, and all of those pieces. And that's something that I didn't really see my predecessor doing. And something I am always, like, as a curious person and as an educator, I always want to have those things available to people if they're interested. Not everybody wants to read a big, long Facebook post. I don't always write big, long Facebook posts. Sometimes I do. But figuring out that quick snapshot of, like, why isn't my trash getting picked up? Sometimes the answer is as simple as Monday was a holiday. You're off by one day. You're just early. That kind of thing. Oh, yeah. Usually people ask these things because they're curious. Sometimes annoyed because the trash then blows down the street or whatever. But there is always an organic reason at the root of that question.
And especially because the communication aspect becomes critical.
Yep.
Extremely relevant in our times when people communicate in different ways.
Yes.
Sometimes by choice, sometimes by need. sometimes by circumstances. And that is something that in previous times has been understood that there is only one way to do it and everybody should adapt to it, or that because the comfort or convenience of some people involved in these processes or decisions, that is the best way according to that mindset, the communication should work. And we know is never enough to the needs of the community overall.
Yeah.
And thinking about that, about abilities, thinking about language barriers, thinking about technology and socioeconomical situations of people, these communication processes need improvement, need a more dedicated work. And I know that sometimes for one person as city councilor, it's something challenging, it's something daunting.
Right.
But there is a community that can come together and work around making these things happen.
Exactly.
So how do you think implementing these monthly meetings that you are talking about could involve other participation from people from not only Ward 3, but also maybe other organizations or maybe other entities from the city that can help promote this in the benefit of the people that you are representing?
Yeah. So my brain just kind of went in two directions simultaneously. The one thing I'm thinking of that came immediately to mind is like, how do we get people to move their cars during a snowstorm? Right? We've had communication has gotten a lot better. Like, it's not where it needs to be yet, but it has improved. I have seen the Holyoke Police Department make a real effort to come up behind people and do the lights and the things like, please move your car. We don't want to give you a ticket. We don't want to tow you. Please move your car. It is an ongoing thing. And it's also one of those things where like the DPW has to work on it and then send that information to the Holyoke Police. And then this happens and nobody likes going to get their car out of the garage when it's been towed. Like, that's expensive and it's terrifying. And it is rife with like socioeconomic disparity. Right? So obviously there has to be a better system because some of it is working, but not all of it is working. Like, this is how we start building in those communities. So if, like, I live in an apartment building and if I see on Facebook, like, oh, let's park on the other side of the street, I can knock on my neighbor's doors or I can put up a sign and be like, yo, I'm over here, park where I am. Like, I have bright hair, I have a brightly colored car. Like, park where my car is, that kind of thing. Neighbors helping neighbors to fill in some of those gaps, but also finding better ways to do it. And I think about this micro level in Ward 3, where I have a number of constituents who aren't on Facebook, who are, and some who are also elderly, and also many who do not speak English as their first language, and aren't going to see a Facebook post or aren't going to see an email. Like, how do we access all of these different things? I've been brainstorming with some different folks in the ward to increase language access, but also do in-person meetings and also do like printed newsletters in English and Spanish. And so that way that information can filter out to folks however they need it, and develop better ways for that to happen. I know email newsletters are super, super popular right now, and that is a good way to get the information out to many folks, but it is not the only and best way to get the information out to all the folks. So brainstorming and thinking about different ways to do that.
So it's been now a few days after you took your oath. You became city councilor for Ward 3. How do you feel about getting into this point after a number of attempts and now getting into that? What it has been so far, the experience in terms of the challenge, the vision of now seeing things from a new perspective, and what do you think you want or you should do in terms of getting up to that level of being the most efficient public server for the city of Holyoke?
Yeah, it has been an adventure. I've learned a lot. It's been 2 weeks, but I met with DPW, I met with the city engineers, I'm meeting with the fire chief next week, I'm trying to set up a meeting with the chief of police. Part of this is also because I'm also the new chair of public safety, and so I'm getting up to speed on a lot of different things, not just procedure, not just this and not just that. But I think the advantage I have is that I have been watching this for so long And having had a predecessor where frequently I have looked at what he's done and been like, I might have done that differently, or my approach would be this. So I went into it with kind of an idea already of what my metric was going to be in terms of how to approach different things, how to get people more involved, how to do more outreach in a way that was a little bit different. Not saying any approach is right or wrong, just a different approach. I'm a different person with a different perspective. And I think that's going to open up some doors for a lot of people who maybe haven't had that opportunity in the last 14 years or so.
Especially thinking about that access to opportunities that sometimes, and maybe it's not intentional. Actually, I truly believe it was never intentional, but the way things were done created a perception that only specific people were allowed to participate in certain things or have more direct access to the possibilities of things getting done, opposite to others who may feel, I am not that involved in the community enough, therefore I don't think anyone is going to care for me. And even that leads to the thought that I've heard so many times by people of different ages and different sectors in the city saying, why should I get involved? Because no one cares for what I say or for what my opinion and including my vote will be about.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question because, I mean, this links right into with like, everyone's talking about low voter turnout, where folks are like, only 17% of people voted in this last election. I'm like, yeah, but also in the one prior to that, when we made that decision about the treasurer, that was 4%. And then the election before that was 17%. And so it's not like it's a sudden problem. This is an overarching problem. And it's one that we need to address, not just with higher involvement in voting, which I feel really strongly about. And I'm hoping to do work in the future with One Holyoke CDC to do some like outreach and door knocking and community events, particularly around voter engagement. But also there are lots of boards and commissions looking for people to get involved, looking for people to serve on different boards. And the trick is finding what you're interested in. Like some people are super stoked about the bike ped committee. Some people are not interested at all. Some people are very interested in the planning board. Some people don't have enough time for the planning board. But there is ample opportunity to get involved if you want to. And I will also say, one of the things that I have particularly appreciated about the mayor and Stephen and Nilka is direct access. Like even before I was elected, I was able to book a meeting with the mayor, mostly by going in or emailing or calling and saying, hey, I would like to book some time with the mayor. I mean, those are basically the magic words. You kind of have to say, I would like to book a meeting with the mayor. Otherwise, they're like, thanks for your input and calling, because you have to say the thing, but you have to know to say the thing, you know? And so part of what I really love about this is my hope is that I get to demystify this process for a lot of people. And I hope people actually look at me and I say this with all affection, but if they're like, that weirdo can get a seat, how come I can get a seat? I'm like, yes, you can. You should run. You should consider running. Elections should bring out the best in us, not the worst. It should be an opportunity for us to get together and talk about our goals and our vision, what we need to have happen, what isn't happening yet. It's an opportunity for real community involvement and moving forward, and we just haven't accessed it enough. And some of that is challenging because people are busy, there's not enough time. Print media is its own thing, and we don't have a daily newspaper, and there are lots of ways for folks to get news, but there are also a lot of ways for people to get maybe not entirely accurate news. Social media can do a lot of damage on things that are not like the full picture. Or, you know, someone will post something like, I saw this order that was filed and I don't like it, and da-da-da-da-da. Like, if I file an order and you don't know what's up, just call me. Just email me. Like, literally my contact information is on the city website. I have gotten emails from people who I don't know who are like, hey, this thing happened in the city. Were you on the committee? Did you do this? And I'm like, I've been here a week. I assure you it was not me, but let me get an answer for you, right? And so part of that, too, is figuring out ways for people to be empowered so they don't necessarily need to come to a city councilor, because that can feel like a really intimidating ask. Like, I get a lot of, dear Ms. Thalheimer. I'm like, it's Ann, it's fine, you know, because people want to be respectful and formal. But also, sending an email is sometimes a really challenging project, especially if you are sending it in a language that is not your mother tongue, right? Same for calling. People have phone anxiety. There's got to be lots of different ways for folks to do this. And one of the good interim ways for people to do it, particularly around like nuts and bolts things, is see, click, fix. It's still online. It's not ideal. There's got to be a way that people who aren't using computers can access it. We got to figure out some kind of accessibility around that. But it's a good middle step. It's a good way you can fill something out. You can fill it out anonymously to get your concern kind of in front of somebody else's eyes without having to make something that feels like a high-pressure phone call or a high-pressure email.
And when you mention all of the situations that happen when you receive these communications, and it's something that it has been going on for a while in multiple situations with different members of the city council, current and former ones, when people, with all their valid reasoning, they may be upset and they may be concerned about certain decisions or information that sometimes is not complete or clear enough for them to understand. So it is natural that they will reach out with a tone or with a specific level of concern, because you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. And you never know what battle somebody's fighting. Absolutely. Yeah. You don't know what's going on with someone.
And one thing that is clear is that with the passage of time, the city has had challenges to learn from about communication, about engagement, about seeing the situation of many people in the city where an email is not the solution for letting people know about something, where the solutions being taken in the past are not necessarily the best or the only ones. And with this process of learning through trial and error, we are seeing that there is so much to learn and so much to do. And that is okay, because as long as we keep that bridge being built from both ends, at some point it will connect.
Yes, that is the hope. That at some point it will connect in the middle. Yeah, absolutely.
So, as representative of Ward 3, but as well, you just mentioned that being a member of one committee, and this is one part that sometimes people do not realize of it until some decisions are made.
Right.
A ward councillor can actually have an impact on decisions that are for the whole city based on the participation in the committees. And sadly, the committees tend to be those meetings where people do not pay enough attention. They think they are just low profile because there is only 4 or 5 people involved with not so much to do, and because whatever happens there anyway is going to be brought back to the full body, so then it can be voted. But by the point is ready to be voted on, all that discussion and all the possibilities to clarify or to bring more about it, they already passed. So how do you see that dynamic between the full body and then the committees having their own conversations and discussion, even if you are not part of that committee?
Right. Yeah, this is great. And then again, thanks, of course, to Holyoke Media for recording all of these things and making them available to the public. Committees are where the big discussion is supposed to happen, right? I think we have seen in the past, in previous city councils, an order will come in, it'll get sent to committee, it gets discussed in committee, and then when it comes back to the full body, they discuss it all over again. Which is, there is ample room for discussion, but the real meat of that discussion should be happening in those committee meetings. And that's the part where you really get to dive in and ask questions. You're still following procedures, still like Robert's Rules of Order, all that stuff. But you really get to have more of a conversation. And one of the things that I am personally looking forward to doing, at least in public safety, is starting to organize meetings around not necessarily themes, but trying to group all the orders that are Holyoke Police Department orders together in one meeting. And so that way, the police department doesn't have to come to a bunch of different meetings, or the city engineer doesn't have to come to a bunch of different meetings, and also to give them as much advance notice as possible. Because I don't like getting called to a meeting on Tuesday on a Friday. That's not fair. You have to give people enough time, because yes, it's their job, but also these meetings happen at 6:30 at night. That is not necessarily everybody's work time. And so I'm looking to organize those things together. The other advantage is that it doesn't turn into who's more important, because if you have a couple of different orders, some are the city engineer, some need the law department, some need the police department, and everybody's there, you have to pick somebody to go first. And that can feel really awkward and weird. And, if people are waiting, people want to be home having dinner with their families, So trying to group them together in an efficient way that addresses things, but still leaves room on the agenda for current important things, but also works to clear out the jacket. So by way of explanation, orders that are not acted upon are laid on the table. They're basically in limbo. And after a certain period of time, they just kind of automatically go there. But what that turns into is the jacket is actually like a file folder, and it's full of all of these things. And the goal is to try to address all of them, because frequently we see things go to committee and we never see them again. And sometimes there are legitimate reasons for those. Sometimes orders come in, there's an order in for public safety that involves 3 different types of traffic regulation. But unfortunately, those 3 different kinds of traffic regulation, one is an ordinance issue, one is something that is actually not recommended by the DOT, and another one is some other weird thing entirely. So you can't act on that order. There's nothing you can do other than give it leave to withdraw and then try to file them as separate individual orders to make sure they get to the right committee. And again, this is super granular, and I didn't know any of this until last Friday when I sat down and went through the jacket and was like, what am I supposed to do with this thing from 2015? Okay, here are your procedural options. Here's this, here's that. I'm like, okay, but how do I make this efficient for people and for the public and for departments? And how do I make it so that we can actually get the work done? And also leave ample time for discussion, because some of them are going to need more public discussion. Some of them are not going to need any public discussion at all, not because the public isn't invited to discuss, but because they're probably not going to have anything to say about that order with 3 different things going in 4 different committees. So, and then making sure that, because sometimes things land in public safety that are actually ordinance things. And so working with the chair of ordinance, funny story, not only am I the chair of public safety, I also sit on the ordinance committee. So this is this genius move, because I can sort of oh, this belongs here, that belongs here. This could have been a C-click fix, that kind of stuff. Just for efficiency's sake. Because the great thing about the current council is, for the most part, everybody there just wants to do the work. Everybody just wants to get the stuff done, get things into the right committees, get things moving forward, rather than having hour-long conversations about very, very particular parts of the charter, or of this, or of that proposal, whatever. Because that's also the part where the general public is I can't take this. I can't sit here for 3 hours and watch this happen, because I don't remember what we're talking about anymore, because everybody's yelling at each other. This is not how city government's supposed to work. And hopefully this is not how it's going to work going forward, but I guess we'll find out.
Especially when we think about the aspects of being into a dynamic that has a very specific structure, talking about the Robert Rules of Order, and with that as well, all the structure and institutional work of the city, its different offices and organizations that are involved with it as well. The language that is utilized on that, a lot of acronyms that for whoever is into this, they will know. But for someone who is looking this sporadically, or maybe for the first time, it's I don't understand any of this. And it creates a barrier where even may feel like it is intentional for people to not understand, so they don't engage, therefore they don't participate, therefore they don't have opportunity to voice their opinions or to bring something that could actually help this to be even more beneficial for the city, even though it is with that intention. But that disconnect that happens between the formalities of things and the need to connect with the community who are not that versed into this language and these dynamics is something that I know it is not part of the work of city councilors, because you have already enough work to do. But how do you think this could be something that can be somehow engaged with other organizations? And I know that you mentioned One Holyoke City and some of those dynamics that could be happening, but What could be part of your perspective on this, especially because you have been trying to get into city council for so long?
Yeah, someone asked me, like, how many times have you run? I'm like, I legit lost count. but I'm so glad you asked this question, because one of the things that got me really interested in local politics quite some time ago was HAP housing. When like Wayfinders HAP housing back in the before times, I guess, used to do like a resident leadership program. Miriam Quinones also, I think, taught a bunch of this, and I don't know if Nueva is going to do it again, or One Holyoke CDC or somebody, but this was like a 6 or 8 week program, childcare and dinner provided, because it was in the evenings, taught almost entirely in Spanish to a group of folks who wanted to learn more about how city stuff worked. And like a city councilor would come in 1 week. Alicia Zola came in and talked 1 week, like learning different departments and governments and how does, like there was one where everybody went to a city council meeting and had like cheat sheets. I also, if anybody wants to come to city council and they're not sure how it works, we have like little cheat sheets on Robert's Rule of Order. So if you're like, what does call the question mean? Like, all that stuff. And I would love to see that come back or be more prominent if it hasn't left. Like, I haven't seen it pop up for a while, but I know different organizations are doing a lot of different things. The pandemic kind of slowed everything down and stopped things. But my understanding is that it's in the mix somewhere. Like an organization is doing something like this. And I want to find out more about it because it's an awesome program. And a super great opportunity, if it is taught in Spanish, for English speakers who do not speak Spanish to come to these programs and experience what it is like to be at a lecture or be at an organization where your first language is not the dominant language being used. Because that is, people who are monolingual do not understand how difficult it is to move between languages. And learning this and being in that situation where like you're looking at your interpreter and the translator and there's a little bit of a lag and something doesn't work, getting that experience and having that compassion really helps deepen understanding around language. And this is something that in my side professional life I am super passionate about because it's one of the things that I do at Yale. I work with non-native speakers who are foreign nationals who come in to study and learn about American academic culture and presentation speaking skills. So this is also like professionally adjacent as well as personally adjacent.
And so that program that you're mentioning, that leadership development was managed by Wayfinders.
Yes, I think so.
And my understanding is that it continues happening.
Yes.
They are actually doing something right now for work readiness.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. That is amazing. They do incredible work. They have always done incredible work.
And definitely something that is good to know that there is awareness of this happening not only from the perspective of the community, but also from City Council, because having that connection definitely will help to make that, to reach out to more people and to see why this is so important in different levels for community.
Right, and having that opportunity to really invite people into the council, like into the chambers, and it's a weird setup because when you go into city council chambers, like fully 75% of that is us and our desks in that circle, and then like the benches or the uncomfortable seats or whatever, and there's never enough room. Like we can't get many wheelchairs in there, and that is not okay. Making that room more accessible in so many different ways for folks, having greater access to different interpretation. I really love that meetings are hybrid because one of the sticking points for a long time is that there isn't childcare. And that is a problem, right? And it might not be a problem that city council can fix, but it is an accessibility need that we need to talk about.
So at this point, when you are facing this new role as city councilor, and this may sound like a typical question when you are campaigning, like, what are your goals?
What are your goals? What are you going to do? Yep.
So basically it's the same question, but now with this new perspective, especially because now you see, okay, there are priorities to think about. There are things that we need to work on. So what are some of the things that you have in mind you would like to move forward as a priority, and then to implement, establish, and that even including personal growth on things that you realize now in your role as city councilor, I need to catch up on this.
Right. Yeah. There's always opportunity to learn. Right. I think about these also sort of as like needs and wants, right? A lot of the stuff that I'm working on immediately are identified needs. Folks who are like, okay, now that there aren't as many trees in my neighborhood, the HVAC resonance coming off of Peck School and Holyoke Hospital is really damaging to my neighborhood. That's a need. We got to address that. Traffic stuff, congestion at like pickup times at Peck School, making sure that people are not parking in no parking zones and folks can get out of their driveways to go places. Working on the HCC crosswalk situation, right? That is a big one. And actually a really good one that I had a really amazing conversation with the DPW and the city engineer about, and we have plans to work on that and move it forward and get some good resolution, finally. But it also takes like money and departments and this and people talking to each other. It's really just getting everybody in the same room instead of just sending a lot of emails, because emails are exhausting, man. So like a lot of the stuff I'm working on is that immediate need. Like potholes, it's pothole season, speed bumps, and like trying to get things out of procedural stuckness into doing things, or like we can't get speed humps, but the city engineer is super aware of this and we're working on other means of speed reduction because this corridor is very clearly identified as an area that desperately needs help, right? And learning more about like what is appropriate. Like sometimes speed humps aren't appropriate because I also learned they have to be spaced at least 300 to 500 feet apart from each other, and not every roadway is suitable for this. I'm like, I didn't know. Why would I know this? But you know who does know? The city engineer. And you find these out in meetings. So working on that stuff. So a bunch of the needs are there. The wants are the community building, the poet laureate thing, finding ways to improve. A lot of the work that I do is quality of life stuff, nuts and bolts. Is my trash getting picked up? How do I move my car? Which side of the street to park on? But quality of life also goes to community building, community meetings, ward meetings. Maybe trying to figure out and like get together and have like a ward picnic or something. Because like people are rarely mean to each other while they're also eating snacks. I mean, I'll put that one to the test. I don't know, but good feelings, right? Getting people together to discuss Elmwood Forest, because that's still kind of like hot on the burner. We're not talking about it as much because it's snowy out and nobody's walking through it, or not as many people are walking through it, but that doesn't mean it's not a defined, need and want, right? This is a thing that the community really feels strongly about, and making sure that that is not out of people's minds. As for like my own personal development, maybe get better at sending emails, but also figuring out good ways to network into communities, like making sure that I'm not just showing up on somebody's door and being like, hi, I'm your ward rep, but like coming in with their neighbor and walking around the neighborhood. This is something I did with door knocking, like so that neighbors are meeting neighbors and we're having conversations. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to have voted for me. You don't have to like me. You don't have to like my hair. I like it. Doesn't affect how I do my job. But we all got to work together. And as your duly elected representative, I'm really committed to that. And I feel very strongly about that part of the process.
And you brought the pink hair.
I sure did.
Which is, it should not be actually an issue, but apparently for some people it is. And I kind of understand it, because different, as we were mentioning before, it creates some feelings, uncertainty, even fear, because that is apparently the norm. You fear what you don't understand. But having pink hair, having no hair,
right,
having long hair or short one, should not be the factor that determines your capacity as someone who is committed to do the type of work. Same as it is being in formal and proper attire or somehow more casual, even wearing a cowboy hat.
Yes.
So what it would be your maybe clarification message to people in the community who may feel weird about that queerness about you in the personal character that is not necessarily the representation that is Ann Thalheimer as Ward 3 City Council?
Right. Yeah. This is one of the things that I use a lot to my advantage. People look at me and they're like, oh, I know you. But you don't. Let's get to know each other. Right? I also had funky hair when I was a university professor. and folks would, I'd get evaluations where it's like, instructor wears too much black. Like, okay, but how does that relate to my job, right? Let's talk about what I'm doing. But I get it. I am not everybody's cup of tea, and that's fine. We don't all have to look the same. But it's also not like I wore a suit and a wig and proper heels to go out and door knock. I've been very open about this is how I look and this is how I am, and not everybody likes that, and that's okay. That doesn't mean I'm not doing my job, right? And I like it. I teach science to kids. Someone was like, you dress like a kindergartner. I'm like, I teach kindergartners. It's a great way. Like, people are like, this is a great way to get kids to talk, because they're like, oh, I like your socks. And now we're building a connection instead of them being like, you're a grown-up. It's like, I am a grown-up. That's true. I don't always have to look like a grown-up, but also I want to expand people's ideas about what dressing professionally or looking professionally looks like, because not everybody in city council chambers is going to have the same clothing budget, right? We haven't talked really about accessibility and expectations, but if you were expecting people to show up to city council in a suit every time, you are going to have some hard conversations, not just with me, but with many other city councilors. And then we're starting to get into like free speech and expression. And we're spending a lot of time and energy on that when we should be focusing on, what do we need to fix? What is the work? My hair color does not affect how I'm going to do the work. It just, maybe we just take a little time getting to know each other. And if people can get down with that, great. If they can't, well, you can send me an email and then you won't have to look at my face and my pink hair.
Matter of fact, thinking about if this was a radio interview instead of television one,
yeah,
the pink hair will not even be part of the conversation,
right.
Even ever.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine for radio people the big advantage of being in the most awkward and odd situations, being at work where no one will even imagine how they actually look like for that particular day?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean they are not capable of doing the work that they do professionally every single day.
Exactly.
So, what it would be as a way to begin to that connection with the community, and not only thinking about Ward 3, the whole community in Holyoke. Mm-hmm. What would be your message to get to know each other now that you are the new city councilor for Ward 3?
Well, the pink hair does make it easy for people to spot me in a crowd. I've had some great conversations in the grocery store where folks are like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about this thing. I'm like, okay, as long as you don't give me a hard time about the 2 pints of ice cream that are in my cart, that kind of stuff. But I do love a good stoop sit. Like when it gets warmer, sitting out on the stoop of my apartment and just having conversations with someone. I did this recently on a warmer day and I actually got to sit down and talk to someone for like 45 minutes. That kind of accessibility is important. I also want to break down some of this formal expectation of like, oh, we can only talk to city councilors when they're in chambers. Like, the reality of it is, like, we are people in your community. And you know us because you elected us, and we're out there and you can see us. We're pretty visible. One of our mandates as city councilors is to be present in our communities. And as we know in Holyoke, you're never just a member of just one thing. Everybody's kind of integrated in a lot of different ways. And this was something that I learned with the Holyoke Local Cultural Council, is like getting out and going to events, I think all that stuff is really important. But also, I'm a big fan of sitting down and breaking bread, right? Hard to be mad at each other when you're eating. I mean, I guess it's possible. I think about some like holiday dinners, but realistically, like, we have a number of, even if we are at opposite ends of the scale politically, we have a number of different things in common. Like, we are all human beings. And we are all human beings who will also all eventually die one day. At the fundamental level, we share basic humanity stuff. So let's start there and build up from that instead of starting this far apart.
And with that, I will appreciate so much, as you did today, being here with us here at Holyoke Media, that these conversations continue happening as often as possible.
Absolutely.
Because this is another way to help maybe create that connection that will communicate to people outside of the formal and official ways that are established. Because I understand, and people should know as well, that there are official ways to communicate with people in terms that are required by law
Yes.
in that specific matter. However, that doesn't mean that it should be the only way, and there are other capacities where communication can happen. And I think sharing this space and even thinking about sharing it with more people involved, it could be a great dynamic to have, a good experience to build up, maybe for the first time. And let's see where this takes us, especially looking at it as the possibility of creating more connection with the community that really needs to have that agency of participation.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's really important. And I know folks might be nervous about doing it on camera, but just coming in and having a conversation and recording it can be really illuminating, because it's important to be there in the room. Email doesn't always capture it, right? Reading a press release doesn't always capture it, but sitting down and having a discussion, you can really get to know like those nuances that you wouldn't get in an email. And people also often, not universally, but often tend to be a little bit nicer face to face. And that's important, that human connection, because if my car battery dies, or if my neighbor is stuck, remember that ice storm we had a ton, like my entire street was out there like trying to help each other dig out of the ice because we were all frozen to the road. That kind of stuff, right? Neighbors helping neighbors, building community, knowing who lives next door to you. All of that stuff is really important. And that's sort of that basic quality of life thing. And having those conversations in here, like I would love to have neighborhood conversations or like field recordings. Like let's all go walk around Elmwood Forest together and have a conversation. Let's get together at the Dam Cafe and have some coffee and just chat and see what comes up. That kind of stuff. It's awesome.
And also helping and supporting local businesses at the same time.
Really important.
So this is a really great way to start the year, start your new role as city councilor.
Thanks for having me in.
And of course, this is an open invitation, not only for you as Ward 3 councilor, but to every single member of the city council and school committee. To come sit down, let's talk, let's manage all possible conversations.
Excellent.
Formally, informally, and also making sure that with this we educate people who may not know entirely how the processes go, and that even includes open law. Open law, because sometimes people may think, well, why this type of things cannot happen that often or this way. There are specific rules, but right now we are in compliance.
Yeah, that would be a great way. And if when you post this, if people have a way to sort of post underneath and say, hey, can we have a session just about open meeting law? Hey, can we talk about this thing? Things people have questions about. Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. So this is our conversation with City Councilor for Ward 3, Ann Thalheimer, who has been involved in the multiple activities happening in the city of Holyoke for a long time, and just being now an elected official is a way to provide more tools for more things to happen, but not in a singular or a personal way by protagonism of one person doing things.
Agreed.
More thinking about how as a community can we do this all together.
Absolutely. Very cool. Thank you so much for having me.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right, I gotta
we
jet.
got it.